Going to do a restoration on these two units. We got a modern, well, not modern, a post-war gateman, and we have a early model of the same. So I'm going to clean them both up. Probably just repaint the base on this one and do a total repaint on this one. On this version of the gateman, the wiring is up here under the top unit, top roof, and basically we have a ground, and the man comes out, and the other one is the light. So the light's always on, and then the man comes out. This one here has a signal sign that's screwed into the base with 2 screws. And to disassemble this guy, you got to remove those, fold up the tabs on the bottom, and then that base plate will come off. So the base plate is off, and it's just a solenoid, a gear plate that opens and closes the door. And what holds the superstructure house in place on this are the rods and these attachment clips. So you pry up to remove them, and they will come off, and then the house should slide off. And that's that. So the man on this unit has a stud and is held on by a nut that attaches to that gear plate. The door itself is attached to that red pulley that also is engaged with that plate. Okay, so as far as how the circuit works on this, I removed one of the poles that was coming up, and that was what was in this hole. And this one, when tightened down, is the ground. It gets the power through the ground and the connection of the base. This one here is isolated and goes to the other end of the coil. The door itself is glued into that red circle underneath, so I'm not going to pull this door off. I'm going to mask this off and then work on some paint removal here, and then prime and repaint with this stuff in place. Okay, so I actually just used a standard paint stripper. Let that sit on there, and I scraped it off with a razor blade. Now I'm just going to go over it with some sandpaper, smooth that out. Alright, so it was wiped down again with some paint thinner. We're down to bare metal here. It's been lightly sanded, so we're just going to go ahead and prime it. And we'll come back after that's done. Alright, so there's the piece all primed up. We let that dry overnight. Tomorrow I'll put the green on, and we'll call it finished. So while we're doing that though, I will take this guy inside. We'll soak it in some lukewarm water, brush it up with some dishwashing soap, and bring these pieces back out, and we'll be ready to go. All right, pick up when this is all dry and the green paint's adhered to it. All right, so got the tape off and it's all painted up. And we'll start doing the reassembly. Okay, so first steps in reassembly is attaching the man, and the man underneath has a nut that tightens him to the right position. You make them parallel with the door, and then the one end of the coil is attached to this rod here that comes up, and then we place the house on top. Okay, so the superstructure's back on. So again, the circuit for the solenoid are these two rods, one here and one there, and these are the pressure clips. So you just slide those over the rods and use a screwdriver to push down the parts that protrude up. This one here is the separate power for the light, so it can always be lit up separately. And then these two here are what powers the door. Okay, so I got the power clips for the light bulb. So we're using the ground and the positive. And then for the solenoid, you're just running the power activator, whether you're I'm going to take it from here, but wherever your other side of the circuit would come from, could be a track connector or a infrared controller. So that completes that. Oh, I do have to put the base back on. The only thing left. Okay, so when you put the bottom plate on, it just slides in and go into place, and then to lock it down, you bend the 4 tabs over. And you know, like anything else, these things aren't meant to be taken apart, so if you bend that a number of times, it's going to break off. But because the bottom plate also protrudes up, if you lose those tabs and the base won't stay on, you can just use a small drill a hole. I would just put one in the center and use a small set screw to lock these in place on both sides. All right, so there's the finished product. Base plate is on. Everything's operates, and that's the conclusion of the first one. So now we'll turn our attention to the pre-war version. All right, so here's the pre-war version. The pre-war version, a little different. First off, it's all made of metal. Has the contact circuit right here, and this one has it's not lit inside, but it has a light bulb here that lights up. So when the man comes out holding his lantern, the light shines up in there, so it gives you the illusion that the lantern is on. So like I said, this is a early one. There's an earlier version still that here has a decal applied giving the number 145. So over the years this is kind of loose and rickety, so we'll take this all apart, do the same repainting, and see if we can get this guy working right. Also on the earlier models, rather than the post-war style plastic railroad crossing sign, we actually have the metal one. So we'll see how this guy turns out when we start taking her apart. Taking it apart, first thing is the roof just slides off. See, inside is pretty straightforward. What holds the superstructure in place are tabs on the underneath, so the next step will be removing the little plates holding it on. And yes, for sake of argument, this is a 45N versus a 145 post-war. And changing the light bulb, this just pops out and you can put the new bulb in. All right, so let's get this base off. All right, so the base is off. Next thing is to get this out. And how this actually goes in, you can see here you got 4 tabs, and that's what holds the base of the signpost in place. So when you put this together, you put the signpost in, but obviously that won't work with this stuff on there. So you got to take off the top cap and then work on this. Be careful because you don't want to crack it, but you slowly work this off and it will pop off sooner or later. There we go. So once that's all off, then you can just remove the signpost. So now, next on the agenda is pry up all these white tabs and go ahead and pull the superstructure off. And it's the same mechanism, method of attachment for the man. So the man's there, he's on a stud, and okay, so battery died on the camera, so I'm picking up with the man. I was doing the man removal, and it was the same thing. This one had a metal plate underneath, and again it has a hex nut that the man attaches to the moving plate, and that's, you got to take him off to take it all apart. So I did in the meantime, when the battery was charging, was I started priming. So the sanded all the pieces down with started with 400 paper and went to 800, and then I primed the roof. Here is the base. Here's the front door, which needed some straightening, and here is the house. So this is the cold snap in Florida, so it's even in West Palm Beach area, it's 40 degrees, so it limits me on how quickly I can do things. I'm not going to even mess with this primer stuff until tomorrow. Let this cure and go from there. One other piece I did is sanded down the signpost, and that's drying as well. So tomorrow we'll do the cream and the reds and the green base, and we'll get everything painted up again for assembly on the day after. Alright, so I've had the chance to paint this stuff up. It's all cured, it's all done. Like I had mentioned earlier, with the temperature being cooler than I like, it's hard to get this paint not to be tacky. So after it was initially dried, I used my my little portable air fry toaster oven thing, and I put the pieces in there for 20 minutes at 300 degrees just to bake that on there. And so now I'll start the reassembly. First thing in the reassembly is to put the man and the door on, and I wasn't able to show you this earlier again because the battery died, but what I did here is, you can see that I put some alignment lines here, so I know the piece goes in there like that when I set it up, and the door aligns on the other side with that, and then I have to solder the door back on. That's how this is set up in these 45 ends. The door post, which is right here, goes through the hole there and gets soldered onto the linkage. So that's the first thing I got to do. And so I put the superstructure back on the platform, and I haven't folded over the tabs yet. I was just going to test run it. The linkage here has been soldered back in place, and the throw is correct. So next is just taking a little pair of pliers and twisting these all over. But first I'll do a test of the mechanism. Okay, so that's working. So I'll fold all the tabs over and then reassemble the base. Base plate's now on. Put the sign back in. This guy's all finished. Happy with this one as well. Here we go, 45N all finished up. Okay, there we go. Here's pre-war 45N meets the post-war 145 gateman. Hope you found this one useful, and I'm going to go back to layout wiring now. Have a great day.